All right. The first item is our few opening remarks that I've got, and there have been a lot of emails that have been going back and forth over the last little bit, which I think is everybody's been copied. So wanted to just a couple of things. There is at your desk something that says AMP Citizens.
Chairman?
Yes.
Could you get this cameraman to move out of the way, because we can't see the screen. Thank you.
All right. So yes. How's that?
You're still in my way, sir. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So I wanted to flag everybody. Diane, I think, has dropped off this for everybody, which says AMP Citizens Advisory Committee members seek more disclosure. I think a recent release that you may have sent out. The other items that are here are a map, which we'll be referring to in the process, and also a series of questions that Diane sent out today related to responses to comments. And here's kind of, I guess, my thought about those is that y'all remember at our last meeting, Minna asked a question that said, I'd like to know what the questions that the community has raised, and I'd like to know what those comments are. So over the course between our two meetings, those responses and comments have been sent out. We've got Diane's comments on those. To me, the question was, we've got responses and comments. So I think we can take this and put this in the minutes, but to me, having that is just additional questions that folks may have. But the question's not, in a sense, before us of how we're going to be answering every community comment in that regard.
No, and I appreciate that, Bert, and do appreciate it being made a part of the record. I didn't intend for them to be taken up today, but as you know, sometimes explanations cause more questions, and it was in that vein that I was looking.
Thank you. And I would say that as you read it, make sure that as we're dealing with particular areas, if there are questions that come up, let's make sure that all those are raised. So thank you very much. The next item on our list is the approval of the minutes. And we've had several different comments for attribution and also for questions that were out there. Those modifications have been sent out, and are there any questions or comments on those? I've got a few, but I wanted to see if other people had any questions or thoughts related to that. Yes?
One comment I know, there was something attributed to you about reinstating something that I don't think that was correct. There was I mean, I'll make my comments in writing, but there's no big deal.
Okay. There are two kind of, there's one kind of interesting housekeeping question I've got for y'all on how we want to talk about things. It's kind of, it's on page 14 of 19, and Steve was talking about Woodland versus Main Street versus Victory Memorial Bridge. Steve, when he was talking, and Richard, when he was talking, referred to things as Woodland Street, when in fact they meant Victory Memorial Bridge and Main Street. So what, I'm thinking that what we might do would be to say something like Woodland Street, which would be what they said, and then in parentheses maybe Main Street, which would be what they meant. What's your thoughts about that, folks?
Yeah, I think that was the little confusion. Richard was, I think he was talking about just keep going Main Street, and while we are changing to Woodland. So there might be a little confusion which street they are talking about. But I wanted to clarification. My understanding was Main Street was elevated, so that was difficult to go that route.
Yeah,
Correct.
And just to take that one step further, Main Street, it's actually.
Microphone, Mark.
It's actually it's the Victory Memorial Bridge. Main Street in East Nashville, on that side of the interstate, actually runs next to it.
So, can you give me the clarification, which one is the elevated portion?
That's the Victory Memorial Bridge,
Bridge,
right?
okay.
So what the minutes say, Steve said, are accurate, but what he said was wrong. It's not what he meant.
Okay.
So I think the minutes ought to be accurate, and there could be a note there that he meant the Victory Memorial.
So, and then the other question that I had, anybody else have questions about the minutes or other, but no?
I had one on page 8. I've asked how the resident numbers vary, and the response is written down. It says, depending on the time of the month. And I'm thinking it should probably say something a little bit different than that. More like depending on the time of the month when I'm asked, what the resident, because it continues to change. So people don't move in and out, and we track that.
Any other questions?
Bert, on page 11, it refers to me as a she.
And I think yours.
Those two comments I did not take. I take care of them.
Got it, you got that. So the other, any other questions or comments? There was 1 minute that you had related to a question on dedicated versus curbside lanes. And there's an asterisk, and I just wanted to understand what you meant, because what I heard, and having gone back and looked at the papers, there was a variety of discussion about that. I was wondering what you meant. I felt like there was some sense
Yes,
of
the reason I
dedicated lanes.
inserted was, Richard made comment. He is for dedicated lane, but he was not really for dedicated center lane, and he was kind of debating. So just, and I think that was your understanding as well, so that's why I wanted to throw in that as a concern.
Are there any other changes or comments on the minutes that we have before us? Courtney, we've got a few changes, so I would incorporate the changes in the discussion that we had. We'll get that back out to folks, but subject to any final revision based on what we get back out to folks. Can we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Thank you very much.
Bert, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This may be a Courtney question. When do amended minutes become uploaded to the website?
Yes, and so they are now, the revised minutes are now uploaded to the website. They should be updated within a week or so, and we will make note of trying to get those out.
Yeah, I'll take ownership of that, because I am responsible for the web, but frankly, there have been so many changes to the minutes that I have not gotten them updated. The most recent one's updated as probably as timely as I should have. It's been hard for me to follow all the changes, but they're updated, they're uploaded.
Thanks.
Okay, I got one more great question. Any other things? So we've got the remarks and the minutes. I've got a favor to ask y'all, and if it's okay, that's great. If not, we will stick with the agenda. One thought would be that if we could take the station architectural design portion and move that ahead, and then get through the regular things, that would be good for me. If there are no objections, then see, Chuck, I'll get to do your station design.
thank you all for letting us be here. I'm Steve Tuck with Tuck Hinton Architects, and I have Chuck Miller here with our firm also. We've been fortunate to have been working on this project for a couple, 3 years now, and most of this work we're showing you was done a year or so ago, and through the 30% process. One of the things with the stations that we have tried to do early on was balance the desires of the neighborhoods with obviously branding the stations themselves and branding the AMP system. What I'd like to do is go through that design itself, describing that design, understanding that the design is always going to vary just a little bit to adapt to the location or to the neighborhood, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. The first thing that we did is obviously establish, go to the next one, establish some station goals, and those were safety and visibility first and foremost, because we're dealing with traffic, pedestrians, and how to deal with that in a safe way was paramount. Also, the transparency of the stations, so that you're seeing what's going on in the stations, was really important. Ease of use, making sure that as you approach a station and it operates differently than the typical bus system does, that getting the tickets, knowing where to stand, where the bus arrives, that it's very intuitive in many ways and very simple, so very easy to understand. Ease of maintenance is also important. How do you clean it? How do you keep it clean? How's it always looking very good? And then iconic branding. What do we do to the stations that can act as visual icons to, again, reinforce the AMP brand and make the riding experience really good? Constructability is the last one we looked at, the last goal, and one of the reasons that becomes very important is because we see this as a kit of parts. It's going to be most cost-effective to design a station that works in all locations, and it just varies a little bit. If we can build this thing off-site, bring it in, and build it very quickly, that's going to ease construction, traffic, everything else that's involved with the constructability of this system. If you see, back up one more, please. If you see the drawing on the right, really what the stations involve is the platform, a structure that then holds a roof. That's simply what the design is. It's not very complicated. And so we will first talk about the platform itself and the station, what we call the station zones. The station zones, we worked with the landscape architects, Hudson Douglas, on this part a lot. What we're going to be doing is looking at lighting and landscaping to sort of set the tone for the stations, or the setting for the stations. So as you're driving down the street, you will know that you're approaching the station by the lighting, the landscaping, and obviously the station itself. You've got the crosswalk, the ramp going to the station. Of course, the bus is moving in both directions in the lane itself. But again, without getting into the details, there's a lot of small things that send clues to the user as to how to cross the sidewalk, how to get to the station, and then how to use the station once you're there. Of course, some of the stations, go to the next one, will be curbside stations. This shows the platform of the center-loaded station, and as you can see, you've got buses going in both directions. It's designed in such a way that the structure is opposite each other, so the side that you load on, for example, right here, with the arrows, load directly into the doors. They will line up with the bus doors themselves for quick access. And then you've got ticketing vending machines. You've got lean rails along the glass where you can sort of, lean and wait for a few minutes till the bus gets there. There are a few pull-down seats for accessibility reasons. And then you've got digital information boards that are telling you when the next bus is arriving and so forth. So all those are things that are helped to make this a very fast operating and, like I said, meets the goals that we talked about earlier. Of course, some of the stations next are side-loaded stations or curbside stations, and they work really the same way. The main difference is that in some downtown locations, the sidewalk, these will be built over the sidewalk, so the sidewalk will actually walk through the station. That happens in only a few of them where it's really tight. Many of them, the side-loaded stations, the sidewalk can still go around the station. You don't have to go through the station. And other than that, they really work the same. These stations are about 10 feet wide, but some will be 12, some may be 8. So they're very a little bit in width. Next. we start to look, once we have the station sort of worked out, and how does it work in plant, how do you access the station, and what are the ingredients that make the station up, then what does this thing look like as it comes out of the ground? And we looked at several imagery kind of ideas, and one of those is obviously music. That's obvious. You look at the curves, the rhythm, things like that that sort of make Music City what it is, and we looked at some of those. And then we also looked at, go to the next one, we also looked at, well, what about the historic buildings or the types of buildings that we have down this route that are sort of important to our city? And one of the things that we noticed, almost all of those, was very interesting, is the Gothic arch. That's sort of this shape like this. Next. So that really gave us the inspiration with this very slight curve, sort of representing the curve of musical instruments, the rhythm of these columns down the street representing music, but then the way that these come together to support the canopy then sort of make this, if you look right down the end of it, like you will see earlier or later on, they make this sort of implied Gothic arch. It sort of references these buildings such as the Ryman Auditorium. That sort of took care of the structure that then holds a very simple canopy. Okay? Now, as we went through this this process, obviously we looked at a lot of different schemes, and we threw a few of them up on the board today for you to look at. We looked at some that had the columns in the middle of the platform supporting a canopy. That doesn't work so well because the platforms are so narrow, and you want to make sure traffic is flowing. So the columns had to be to either one side or the other. And you see sometimes they're connected to the top, sometimes the roof had a little different wave to it or curve, and some were flat. So we looked at all of these just trying to get sort of the right feel and also start to think about, well, could these change in neighborhoods? And yes, they could change a little bit in the neighborhoods as long as we maintain the brand itself. Next. During this process, we met with a lot of different groups. You can see them listed here. And I think that just sort of touch base with those to see what kind of comments they had. There are really three things, next, that came out of that process. And one of them was to make the length of the stations a little smaller. We had the stations at one time about 150 feet long. And the reason for that was is we had one whole bus over here and one whole bus over here, and really had more room for people to sort of stack up and wait for the buses to arrive. And after further discussion and looking at how many people are waiting and the arrivals of the buses, we felt like we could shorten that. So actually, as you saw in that earlier plan, the buses actually overlap a little bit. They aren't totally separate. And that allowed us to change the platform's length a little bit. The other one's transparency. If you notice some of the sketches earlier, we had shown basically sort of metal skins that were perforated or had design in them, and then glass. It could be etched or graphics on it or whatever. And I think there's two things that that we were trying to do at that point. One is you want to make sure that as you're driving down the street, you can see everything going through there. It's very open. It's very minimal impact visually to wherever it's in front of Centennial Park or wherever this may be. It's a minimal impact, but it's very sculptural. It looks like art than it would a station. That's what our hope would be. But it's also important that if you're on the station and there's buses and traffic around you, that you feel safe, that there's some sense of protection from the traffic, and there is. But I think the overall thought is we need to make sure we had more transparency than some of the options that we showed. So right now we're looking at those panels being glass panels, horizontal glass panels, and again, there's a lot of ways that we can treat those panels that they look differently. And then the third one was being able to adapt these to the neighborhoods, which I've mentioned before. Again, making sure that we maintain the brand, so you know it's the AMP brand, you know what the station's for, and that's very important to the system. But on the other hand, that as we go in the neighborhood, whether it's colors or whatever, there's things we can do to adapt that to make it a little personal, have a little different personality for that particular neighborhood. And I want to talk a little bit about those in a minute, okay? And that led us to this design, which I believe you all seen before. But I think in this design, to get a little more clarity, you've got these very, simple, these are about 6-inch steel posts that'd be painted. We're looking at the ceiling being a wood ceiling. with lights off of these posts up high that would uplight the ceiling. So as you're driving down the road, you aren't looking at a ceiling with lights coming from it, but you see a wood ceiling that's just glowing wood. So it has a real sense of warmth, a real sense of familiarity. And then the edges of those have glass to keep as the bus pulls up, there's a very little separation between the bus and the canopy to protect you from the rain. And as you can see from one side where the columns are, that sort of signals you to enter the bus the other direction, and then you go beyond that, it sort of says enter the bus in that direction. And then there'll be like the signboards and so forth. And the opportunities for altering these a little bit for the neighborhoods is there, and so I want to talk a little bit about the adaptable design. I think I've covered most of these. Yeah, I mean, there's landscaping. We talk about the adaptability of the design in the neighborhood. There is, art components. You can see a little art component in this location. The idea that you could actually do something on the surface itself to tell a story about the neighborhood or on the glass. We've talked about etching the glass or doing graphics on the glass that could tell the history of the neighborhood. Yeah, Bert?
So do you have landscaping in those end pieces?
Yes.
Like where the art?
Yes. And, what we're talking about is right now, as the lanes diverge, there's the opportunity for landscaping and art at either end, okay? There's the ability of, changing column color, for example. At this end, we're looking at the possibility of bicycle racks at that end. That's been discussed. That would depend on the station location, for example. Let's go to this next list, I think. This sort of shows some things that could be done to modify these a little bit for the neighborhoods, and that would be, naming the station, obviously, as identifier that we've already looked at. Public art. Public art will be a part of this process, and so we think there are a lot of different ways, whether it's the handrails that we will have on the ramps and the infill of those handrails, the way that they're cut out of metal or glass with etching on them. There's a lot of things that could be done to incorporate art. Could be sculptural art that's part of that. The taper element is what you were mentioning, Bert, which is the landscape area. There's a lot of different ways that could be treated as you drive down the street and you see the end of the station. Decorative bollards, those are safety bollards that will be in different locations. That's a perfect example for artists to design those again to tell a story about a neighborhood or a location. Signage, handrails, and then other elements that may not even be on the station, but may be to the side of the station. Maybe they're part at the end of the crosswalks or whatever, that again, they're in that station design area, but they're still trying to tell a story of maybe the history or that particular area. And I think there's a lot of other ideas of how to do that. But that's sort of where we are now. We don't have we've talked about some materials like the different possibilities for the platform itself. Is it a tile? Is it a tile that an artist makes? Is it a stamped concrete? What kind? There's all kinds of things that we can get into like that. But basically, that's sort of where we are with the station design. And I'm open up now for comments or thoughts about, I think particularly this area and how these things could be adaptable and still trying to balance that branding and image is important. So.
Steve, I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe I missed it. Did you discuss protection from the weather, the heat, the rain?
There is no. Well, there's no. It's not a environmental enveloped building. In other words, there's no air conditioning and no heat.
I know that.
What we have done is we've put one of the reasons for the glass on one side is try to prevent. If it was open on both sides, then you get the wind blowing right through it in the rain. So that would prevent the rain from, blowing in as much as it would in a rainstorm. Basically, your protection is the covering from the sun or the rain. It's the roof.
See,
did that answer the question? Okay.
in this picture, is there glass between the upright support posts?
Yes. In this situation here, for example, why don't you go back to the one before that? I think it's a little bit clearer. Or you can move back away from it a little bit. Yeah, this one, for example, you can see it. There's glass here, these four locations. So as you're
how high up does it go?
Well, it goes to the canopy right here.
Okay. All right.
And then the columns just go beyond that in order to
Yeah.
support the roof. But what that glass is doing, obviously, is as I'm waiting on the bus on this side, that gives me, and you see the seating rail there, that gives me something to back up against and feel safe against the bus on the other side that I'm not waiting for. And then it just reverses on this side. The glass is on that side, see?
Okay, thank you.
I just have a comment. I think one of the things that you have to work for is, or look for, is security for the people that are in this station. I'll use that term because I'm familiar with, subways and all that, but you're having trains on tracks driven by professionals. Your concern here, to me, is just the human nature of people, with automobiles, and I think you need to concentrate a little bit more on some safety elements. I realize you've got some, but I still think people would feel pretty vulnerable standing in that thing. That's just a comment. I could be wrong.
Well, there are, Joe, to answer a couple of those things, obviously, this station typically is raised 15 inches above the street in order to load directly on the bus. Secondly, of course, you've got the steel columns there, but there's also warning strips like you see on subways that are 12 to 18 inches wide, that are yellow and not, what I'm talking about, that run across the edge that sort of keep people back. Now, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, I realize that. But you're really, the traffic that's out here, of course, this is the bus lane, this is the traffic lane, and, but that's something we have spent a lot of time talking about safety, and I'm sure we will.
I'd like to see more balance, but that's mine.
Joe,
More of these.
I'm an old person.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, Joe, we've had some of those discussions with Public Works and TDOT. They brought up some of those questions. We're aware of them.
Okay.
Working on.
Yeah, we have discussed where you're loading here, whether you have baller space so you can still walk through to get to the
Sure, that's
door.
my thought.
It just sort of says,
I like to see those big round ones that if somebody hits them, they hit something serious.
Yeah, yeah.
We're also considering how or if we should incorporate any of those in the nosing as well.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
It might be apparent to everyone, but I wanted to be sure since I can't see those designs. I'm really concerned and want to know about the planned, I've heard you mention a couple of things about accessibility already as far as pull-down seats, and I realize you said something about handrails. I just want to make sure that we have the accessible ramps going up to these since they are off the ground, some that a person in a wheelchair or some sort of mobility device can get up there. And once up there, do they have the clearance required by the ADA, such as 36 inches, all that stuff taken into account so that they can maneuver up there along with everyone else that might be on the station? And I think the yellow things you're talking about are the truncated domes that are usually there that indicate to people who are blind that, hey, there's an edge there. So I don't know if other people are aware of that, but that's what that's for, and that hopefully will kind of clue everyone else in too. So that was some accessibility questions I had, and then I had one other question/suggestion. When you're talking about the etchings and the glass and things that tell the story about the neighborhood, I think we've talked about some wayfinding technologies before, and I was kind of curious if there had been any thought as to planning some sort of audio version of that.
Let me start with the first question on accessibility. Yes, the ramps are all accessible. In fact, the ramps are the width of the station, so it's 8 to 12 feet wide. It's a very wide ramp. Meets accessibility. There's bollards to let you know that you're in the traffic zone, the pedestrian walkway, the seats, the width. We've looked at all of that from an accessibility standpoint. I don't think on the audio portion we've gotten to that level of detail to have that discussion. I think that's a great idea. I think we're going to have to deal with that, obviously, with ticket vending and some other things. But we have not been involved in conversations to that level of detail yet. Like I said, we're just about 30% through our design process, and I'm sure all those will be discussed. I think that's a great idea.
Hey, Teresa, this is Steve Goodrow talking.
Tricia.
Obviously, we can, Tricia, sorry about that, Tricia. We can, like Steve said, we're not quite that far in the wayfinding process, but clearly we can be able to put some push-button technology to read back or sound a story. We definitely are going to be doing that for the next bus information signs. Those should come out both visually and audibly. So I think there's a number of features that we're definitely going to be looking into. And we'll certainly mark down to consider the audio piece for the wayfinding component.
That's great. And I did understand correctly they were doing digital voice to announce buses coming in and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would be verbal.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Steve.
Hello.
My question has less to do with design but location, but you've built a lot of stuff around town, so I'll ask you. There's a center station that sits, it looks like right in front of the federal courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Right down from 8th.
Yeah, and I was just wondering whether there've already been conversations with the federal marshal's office or GSA or whoever has to do with, putting those bollards up for one thing to prevent sort of the public being able to get too close to a federal courthouse, and just wondered if that question has been asked and how that plays into design and location.
Well, I'll ask Steve to do that. Our role has been really the station design, and the location of the stations has more been engineering and routing and usage and things like that. So that station has been relocated since we were as involved a little bit. And so I don't know that they've been located. I don't know if the feds, having worked on federal buildings, they obviously want to keep people away as much as possible as far as bollards and things like that. So I don't know that that would be a problem with the feds. We've worked on some federal courthouses, and I think that one, I don't see, there's many federal courthouses that have all kinds of stations in front of them. So I don't think that'd be a problem, but I don't know if they've been contacted. Steve, do you know that answer?
Yeah, we have not contacted the federal courthouse yet. Again, it would be an element on the curbside. And if we had to incorporate that into our project, I think maybe we could, but often that's a federal project to add those. So, but we'll definitely check.
Any other
What about security cameras at all the stations?
We're intending to have security cameras at each of the stations, several of them. One of the cameras will be like, we'll be able to tilt and pan at will by the operator at the security center. But the rest of them will be located, fixed to, watch particular locations. But there'll be multiple cameras.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I'm wondering how safe and strong of this design will be against tornado or, those kind of strong wind, just safety concern.
Do you want to address that, or?
Well, I would say...
They're going to be designed according to Tennessee structural standards.
Yes. Now, so it depends on how strong the tornado and hurricane, whatever. I mean, it just depends, but they'll be designed to meet codes. Your typical weather, big thunderstorm, rain would not be a problem. But obviously, if a 5 tornado came through here, I don't know that they would, that roof, the columns would probably be there. The roof may be a mile away. So I don't know if that answered your question, but part of it is we also have not gotten the level to do the structural engineering of this. This is a concept design, and we have had structural work done on this, but not to the level that I can tell you this will meet a, level 3 tornado. I don't know that specifics, but I doubt it meets a 5, and it probably meet a 1, but somewhere in between, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my question is related to pedestrian crossing into the space. And for example, right now, if you stand at the corner where the Wendy's is on West End, you can wait for 5 minutes before the light will change because you have no power over the changing of the light. It's tied to the traffic situation. And I'm wondering about someone standing on the other side, how's that going to trigger? And
Well, I'll say one quick answer, and I'll let Steve follow up with details, but I think part of the whole system is synchronization of the traffic lights and the pedestrian crossings to work with the bus system and the traffic flow. So all that's a synchronized system, and am I right?
That's a great question. We're working on, we're beginning to get into the signalization piece. We're just finalizing our traffic now, but our goal is to have the crossings, they can be called by the pedestrian, which means you press the button, or as well as timed to the signal itself and the buses. So it's a complicated system. We're also looking at the possibility of being able to cross one side before the other side to maybe speed that up. We haven't resolved that yet, but we're considering that feature if we could incorporate that, because it does take a while to cross everybody all at once. So if we could do one side at a time, that would speed that up a bit. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for C?
I'm just curious, if you've got a pedestrian push button and you've got a bus driver with a queue jump button, who trumps whom?
I would think, we'll have to see where they are in the cycle. Usually what happens is there's a process that decides who's first and who shaves green time from which part of the cycle. So it just depends on how far away the bus is from the
And how
crossing.
wide the crossing? Because you could be
Right.
halfway in and the bus driver could.
And that has a particular time requirement too for how it crosses.
So you're not going to cross the road and be halfway through?
No, it's going to be a protected crossing. Correct.
Any other questions for C? Thanks a lot. I think
Thank you all very much.
Even Mark has never gotten that.
Probably won't.
But it's y'all's time up, and so the next items are, next item up is the downtown route. I'll turn it over to y'all.
All right. As indicated in the agenda, the next couple items involve.
Steve, would you let me ask a question that I thought about and forgot to mention? Can Steve tell us how difficult it would be to change the location of that fixed station 20 years from now if the population demanded a different location for bus access?
Excuse me, I can't catch all. How difficult it would be to change the station?
Yeah, would you have to?
Well, from our standpoint, from an architectural construction standpoint, we see these being relatively prefabricated. So I think the issue of actually moving one, you really want to be stationary so people get used to it. If you really had a population change, you wanted to move one, it shouldn't be very difficult to do from a station standpoint. Now, you got utilities and some drainage and other issues that Public Works will need to get into, but I think to move a station, if you really, put one in the wrong place in 10 years, you had the population.
So once the demolition process takes place with the platform itself, then the station erected on top of it could be moved fairly easily.
Yeah, yes, what's on top is easier to move than the substructure.
Okay.
But that could, we move buildings and tear them down, so that would be fairly easy if that's what you need to do.
So it interrupts traffic, though.
Yeah,
Thanks, I was
that's
just
right.
curious.
Thanks, sorry. So we're off on back again to downtown and looking at some of the different questions that come up.
Great. Thanks, Bert. Again, in these next couple of slides, we'll take a look at the downtown. We'll review the downtown. We'll review Midtown. And we'll also just begin introducing West Nashville. As we've discussed before, we have an alternate route that we've proposed where as we go down Broadway, we would turn on 8th. From 8th, we would go to Commerce. And then on 5th, we would go northbound up to Gay. And then Gay onto kind of weaving through James Roberts, and then down to Union, and then across the bridge onto Woodland. Coming in the other direction, we would then, again, across the bridge on Woodland, we would go north on 3rd Street, and then we would go west on Gay, and then south on 4th, and then west again on Commerce, and south on 8th, and then back onto Broadway. Just in review, we've needed to do this in some ways to allow 5th to work for trucks. It also reduces some of the slope issues that were here at Broadway as well as on 5th itself. It eliminates some of the turn conflicts that we have at Charlotte, And it also provides a loop, you might say, between people that if you were to take the bus north, you could also take the BRT back south again. So it creates a loop, which is a positive thing. This route also minimizes some of the detours associated with Demumbryn and the lower parts of 4th and 5th, as we had mentioned in other parts. And I know we have had a couple different questions just about employers and residents in the downtown. It also touches a fair amount of folks that live and work in the downtown area. This is just a map from the census showing just where some of the larger employers are in the area. And again, we touch many of those. And then again, population. The route also touches many of the larger population areas in the downtown. From last time, we had a couple of questions that did arise based on the downtown route. And one was whether we could put a center platform at the location of the Commerce Station between at 6th. And what we found is geometrically it'll fit. We can fit that in there. I do want to just say, though, we are continuing to talk with Metro about whether we can make that bus only in these directions. And this way, it looks as though we can fit that in. What we're looking for is to see if this queues up far enough to block the bus. And if it does, then we really want to make sure that we have a bus only there. But the good part is it does fit geometrically, and we continue to have some discussions with Metro on some of the traffic operations for that. The next question, again, similar, was as if we could put a center station at Union, and again, physically, we can fit that in there. Again, we can have a fairly wide platform, 15 feet. We can still have the 11-foot bus lanes. I like to keep these 11 feet as the buses are kind of large moving in next to the station. And as I mentioned before, again, we continue to have some dialogue with Metro on how the traffic would function here. But it's physically possible. Another question, this has been asked a couple times. It's about being able to move the stop bar back at 5th and Charlotte so that a bus could make a right turn. And as you can see, this is a blow up of that, and this is the stop bar here. And
It's the what? I'm sorry, Steve.
excuse me?
It's the what?
A stop bar.
Okay.
Right
Can you
here.
move the mic closer to you? Thank you.
Yeah, the question was whether you could move the stop bar, which is this bar here, where people are supposed to stop. It's paint on the ground, yep. And even though you might be able to do that, the bus really still takes up both the through lanes and part of that turn lane to make that turn. So, it's really not a practical option. We feel that traffic's going to continue to back up there in the cross street and would make it almost impossible for the bus to make it through there. Again, we're still in discussions with Metro Public Works on that, if they would allow that. But we're just trying to reinforce that it's a very confined cross turn, and it would be very difficult. Even though you stripe it, it would still be difficult to just keep drivers out of that area. So, but we are continuing to discuss. Yes?
And there's also the parking garage for the Music City Center opens or exits and enters right there on Charlotte. So at 5 o'clock, Charlotte is pretty much immobile at certain times for people trying to get in or get out of that garage right there.
Right. We agree with you. It gets pretty jammed up.
Could you go back to Comas and could you explain to me one more time about your discussion about bus only, that portion?
Sure.
I couldn't quite get it.
Right here?
Yes.
Okay. We're still examining the traffic here. As you can see, there's a left turn lane on Commerce going to 5th here. If the cars queue up, like all the way into the station area, then the buses could not pull in. So there's some continued technical review that needs to happen, and again, we need to get some approval from Metro on that. But the solution would be is to, obviously make this a bus-only piece there, and make sure we push all the traffic into the one lane. Again, this is, a developing, some of these answers to these comments are a developing answer and take some time to flesh out all the issues.
Joe?
I may be presupposing you're going to speak about this, but Diane raised a question about the station in front of the federal courthouse. Do you have anything that shows that, what you're doing there? Have you worked that one anymore? There have been some discussions of changing where it's located or whatever. What?
I have a plan of that. If you want to look at that now?
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Sure.
Before we leave that, are you changing the direction of 6th Avenue North?
No, we're not.
You got a left turn going up there. They're going to
Right.
run into some cars.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll just.
Sorry, Joe.
No,
That's okay.
It's important.
We'll just break away here a minute. Is that okay?
All right.
All right.
Yeah, there's no right turn.
I must not be whispering. Must not be.
I believe this is the station here
Right.
at 9th.
So where is the station
The station would be this hatched piece here,
now? Okay.
and here in the eastbound direction would be a bus lane, and on top of that, in the westbound direction would be a bus lane. Again, we're keeping the left turns here.
Because that's a really, that Rosa Parks and Broadway, I mean, to say the obvious, that's a really congested intersection, really important.
Right. And that's, we've kept those lefts. We also have kept a through and right, some right here.
Is there curb parking, is that retained or is that gone? Just to what I would say is the north of the bus station, now, isn't there curb parking there or is there not? I don't remember.
There,
I think there is.
That wouldn't remain, would it?
in this plan, it would not.
Obviously, there's no parking in front of the courthouse. Okay.
Steve, just as a point of clarification to Joe's question, am I correct in remembering that all on-street parking along the route will go away as part of the route, just to yield maximum
I believe
throughput
so.
for the traffic, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
We set?
Any other questions about this? I know we can dive into it much detail if we go back to the.
Continuing, I know at our last meeting, the question was that we would go back to Metro and MTA to discuss the routes and the downtown pieces. We're in the midst of that. Again, this is a developing process. We've not finished all those meetings yet, but what I can report to you is that we are meeting with them and trying to take a look at the different options and things downtown.
I want to state it a little clearer than that, because we have been meeting with people on the question that's been raised about Demumbrian Street, whether the bus should be on Demumbrian. We want to keep it on Commerce. The reason that we want to do that are really more about MTA than Public Works. Public Works advised us that there were a number of special events, something like 200 days a year when there might be an event, and that could interrupt the route. What MTA has stressed to us is that predictability of the system and reliability is really key. If people don't know when the bus is going to come and where they can get it, they might not ride it. And so we can have that predictability and reliability on Commerce Street, and so that's something that we want to do. The other question that came up, and this was on the East Nashville side, was would it be a better alternative, Richard brought this up, and other people have too, but the question was, would it be a better alternative to just go from James Robertson Parkway onto the Victory Memorial Bridge into East Nashville? And I thought that was kind of an interesting idea at the beginning, and I don't, since Richard's not here, I don't want anybody to let him know that I thought that was a good idea. But when we looked at it, it's got 6 things kind of working against it. It's elevated. It's also on an incline, and so we would have to put a flat station on an inclining bridge. We would have to build an elevator. Once you got to the bridge, we would have to stop traffic so that you could walk across the crosswalk to the station. It's a state route. And then maybe the most complex issue of all is that we have reversible lanes on that bridge. And to try to do a center station dedicated lane on reversible lanes kind of sounds like a engineering graduate school bonus question. So with those things running against it, I think we're also just going to keep it where it is on Woodland. So that's the results we've come up with. Open the discussion.
Thank you for reporting back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Questions? So we're through, so the downtown route you've presented. Throw up the first slide then that has the downtown route on it and see if there are questions that any of us have about the downtown route.
I have a question. It's related to potential ridership because that particular route, especially going up 5th, there will be Music City Circuit, blue bus and green bus going into the same direction and then coming back from 5th. So I'm kind of feeling there will be lots of competition knowing because existing those Music City Circuit rider would like to keep current bus system.
Question or thoughts on that, on this downtown circulator, how it could move and what the impact would be?
Well, I think a couple things. One, I think there's an advantage in that it'll allow folks on the BRT to get on the circuit easily so that they can jump off and get on and get to other places in the town. Now, on the other hand, MTA is also looking at how they may update or change the route. So it may not stay the same way, even though it offers the ability to have a more local connection for those that ride the AMP. So I think there's good things that these routes overlap.
Bert, let me comment on that. I don't think that we should consider competition or overlap for any route in any way on any of this, because MTA looks twice a year at changing the routes. And so I think they're all changeable. And if we're smart, if we do this, we'll take a new look at all of that.
Yeah, I just wondered how many other buses are running on there? Anything going south on 5th and stuff? How many routes, I guess, are coming down that road?
I know 4th does.
Okay.
But again, I think it's a good thing. It allows folks mobility and access to other routes.
I think it also goes to Lewis's answer too. There's some work to do there, and there's work going on. So, and it's a good question. So we'll be coming back to you on all of that.
So as it relates to any other questions about the downtown route? So your recommendation is that it be on Commerce, that it go out on Woodland, and you have a question as it relates to whether to make the turn in Charlotte or to extend all the way to Gay. So that's
Yes.
the one open issue that's out there.
Yes.
Are there any other questions or comments that folks have? So at our last meeting, we talked about reaching kind of a consensus for any additional comments on the East Nashville route. Surprise, surprise, we've been through the downtown route 3 times now, and we're down to 2 decisions that have been made in an open item, which is the connection between, the decision of Gay or Charlotte as to where to make the turn. I would ask if there is consensus or any other questions about this, because I'd like to say that we have consensus on the route as it is presented with those 2 issues that are recommended and with 1 issue that needs to be addressed.
Well, I don't see how we can have consensus. I think that there were specific questions that were asked about the route that Steve and Mark have addressed. But since Mark opened the door to this, predictability and reliability has not been established. If you remember, the basis of this entire running the BRT on dedicated lanes from St. Thomas West to 5 Points was a faster transit. Now we've got a reduction in the number of dedicated lanes, but we have yet to see any supporting information as to what impact that has on ridership, what impact that has on the numbers regarding the reduced bus service that the January report said, and will people in fact see this as an advantage, that it maintains a speed that will make this a faster transit? Our meetings we're the best behaved committee I've ever been on, Bert, because we sit here, you're welcome, we sit here and we listen, and we comport ourselves very well, but these are broad statements that yet do not have underlying support that we can examine. And for me, call me skeptical, but that's just, that makes it very difficult for me to give my imprimatur at this point for consensus.
Other folks that have comments about the question of consensus that we have.
What about the issue on 5th? I think up to March, that was one-way street, and then March it changed to two-way street. And I think at the meeting on March, there were great numbers of people who walked around downtown, have business, or come to office, has lots of pushback going back to two-way. And so now AMP is going one way on 5th and then another way on 4th, changing back that 5th to, again, one way was raised. So is there any concern or issue on that?
I think the two-way on 5th was changed in June of 2013. And I think over time it's worked out to be an advantage to the one-way setup that was there prior. And there are certainly people that still don't like it because it has changed the traffic pattern or two, but overall the streets function a lot better as a two-way street over the last a little bit more than a year. So
I disagree with that, Tom, because with the delivery vehicles that you see on Fifth Avenue, there's no way that you can have what we're proposing with a two-way street there. It's impossible. I'm not an engineer, but I drive down the street and I see all the delivery vehicles going north, and south. They're headed south. It just doesn't make sense.
yeah, I mean, if a delivery vehicle doesn't follow the loading zone rules, whether it's in East Nashville or West End, it's going to cause a problem. So if they decide that they want to stop going northbound, then it's a big issue. The entire west side of the street, southbound, is open for delivery vehicles in the morning. But yeah, they do stop and they do it on other streets too. they have a delivery to make and they'll pull over and stop. And I don't think that BRT or MTA or any other initial is going to change their minds until they get enough tickets that it causes them to change their pattern. Just the nature of the delivery business.
Yeah, let me add something too. From a project perspective, we kind of have to fit in what we're given. And so if Second Avenue or Broadway or Fifth Avenue or whatever street you're looking at runs a certain direction, then that's what we have to work with. We also know that over time, and you know, we've all seen this, there'll be changes made in the future. Kind of goes to Drake's question earlier for Steve. There will be adjustments and there will be, you know, future projects and changes, and we'll just have to adapt to those. But what we've tried to do is find the most efficient, you know, route in the downtown. When you look at the western section of this route, it's pretty easy because it's a straight line. We're connecting two dots. But when you get downtown, we have a street grid, so we can, in a sense, kind of go anywhere we want. And that's the discussion that we've been having in the last 3 meetings. What we think we have now is the most efficient, given all the circumstances and variables. We think we have the most efficient route.
We're here to try to discuss congestion, and that's Fifth Avenue is congested.
There is no question that it is, and I think it is on a lot of different levels with a lot of different factors, and we're trying to work into that as well. But it's a complicated situation.
Let me ask, what portions of the downtown route that's on this map here are dedicated bus lanes?
None of it.
None of it?
Only on Broadway, and we're looking at maybe a piece on Commerce if we go with the center platform. That requires it.
And that would leave,
Union.
for example, on Commerce, if you go with the center loading, how many lanes on each side does that leave?
We still
for
have
traffic?
We still have to coordinate the traffic part of that. We've just shown today it's geometrically feasible. We're still working with Metro to see if they would allow us to do bus only.
But if they did allow what you're proposing, how many lanes of traffic?
It would only have
cars?
one lane.
One lane in each direction.
Right. And we need to cycle that back with traffic to make sure that would work. So we're in process on that detail.
Okay.
But before, you guys were suggesting that there'd be curbside stations at that area and not designated lanes.
Correct.
Okay, and they're going to examine the traffic either way?
And we had a question from this group to take a look at center there. And so
Okay.
we're following through with that.
Okay.
So I had an unusual mailing over the last couple of weeks, and I think several of us probably got a couple of mailings from the Stop Amp people extolling the virtues of the Austin plan. And one of the features of that plan was that through the downtown corridor, there were what they called transit lanes, which aren't exactly the transit priority lanes, not dedicated lanes, but where on the right lane is reserved for the BRT, except for right turns only. And I'll give credit where credit's due. If they want to come out in support of transit priority through the downtown core, I'm all for that as well. Is there any way something like that could work on the Fourth Avenue South portion where you make that right lane bus only except for right turns to clear up some of where you have multiple lanes going in the same direction, clear up some of the congestion?
Where are you talking about again?
On the Fourth Avenue South, where you're coming back down through the corridor.
Well, before Steve answers, Fourth Avenue is about as bad as Fifth Avenue. And so...
But it's one way.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that's important about Fourth Avenue is that it goes to the interstate. And so Public Works is really protective of Fourth Avenue. I know that because I tried to close it like 15 times when we were building the convention center, and they said no every time. And and that's just kind of a preface to say that it gets complicated really fast when you start talking about these traffic issues on these really narrow streets. So,
Having said that, certainly we could evaluate, say, a peak hour dedicated lane that buses and right turners could use. We could do that.
I think when we're talking about how bad 4th and 5th Avenue we ought to say how good they are.
I think they're both really good.
Yeah, I would love, in the looking at that, to look at a designated bus lane that runs for, traffic, high traffic in the morning and out, high traffic in the afternoon, just in comparison. I mean, if we're saying we save 1 to 2 minutes with in-traffic buses and 2 to 3 if they have a designated lane, I mean, it'd just be worth looking at because it would be a lot more affordable.
Yeah, just to kind of tap onto that, I mean, essentially, this is the community's project, and I hate to say Public Works won't let us look at that. I mean, I know that's what you're saying, but if, yeah, or somebody.
Or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think, obviously, if there's a better idea, we ought to look at it.
We will.
So.
Thank you.
Bert, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't envy you in your search for consensus in this group. I think if you were to ask us if we all strongly support improved mass transit, you'd have instant consensus on that. The fact that you can't get consensus on this is, it's probably a plan that we're not ready to endorse because of all the little things that are coming up.
And Drake, I would take issue with that. And here's the thought that I've got is that Diane's questions about ridership, about whether we ought to be doing the AMP or not, I mean, those are fair questions that I don't think are necessary. I mean, the ridership piece, I think we're going to see, but the big whether we're going to do the AMP or not is really not the purview of what we're trying to do. I think what our charge is to tackle what we've done really hard with this particular route, which is, should we be on Commerce, should we be on Broadway, should we be on DeMumbrian, and to give our input about what we think those choices are. They've come with a recommendation. We've talked a lot about, those 3 choices. We've talked a lot about whether it ought to go on Main Street or Woodland, and where should it cross, and why should it cross there. And so I think we are adding a lot of value by exploring at this level a lot of those kind of questions. And it is at the route level, at the foot by foot piece that I'm really trying to make sure that we've got all the issues on the table, have them discussed, have the folks that are the engineers, talk to us about, explore with a variety of folks to get there, and then come back and present something. So if we are all opposed to it going on Commerce, then we ought to stand up and say we're opposed to it being on Commerce. So I think it is at that level that I'm asking to see whether, having seen this route 3 times, had the ability to ask a variety of questions about it. Are there changes in this route that we would make, not should we do it at all, but given what we know and the questions that we've asked, are we okay with what has been presented?
I'm not saying that we need to vote against the AMP. I'm just saying that if the AMP route could be enhanced, made safer, done more cheaply with dedicated lanes, bus transit in certain areas, that's fine. Have stations where you can have them. I want to see this done because it'll mean a lot. but we need to do it in the best way and the most cost-effective way, because we're spending people's money.
I agree. And so my question would be, along this route that we've got outlined in downtown, do we think that there are changes that need to be made in this that would answer every one of those questions that I think you've asked that are legitimate long-term?
Well, Bert, I didn't intend you to take my comment about failure to reach consensus or my ability to reach consensus as trying to reopen the issue from the beginning. But because of the claims that have been made by a good many people associated with this project from the beginning, if they cannot show predictable increase in ridership, if they cannot show the flow of traffic during peak hours, if they cannot show that it is a faster transit, and we already know that they can't show that it's the spine to any regional extension of the system, then with all due regard to what Mark said about, our job is to just put it where we don't even have the alternatives analysis that says this is the corridor that it should be on and this is the mode of transportation. Without that, why on earth would we be able to reach consensus about what is a cut and paste routine about it now without those numbers?
So my question, Diane, is, are there changes in this particular configuration that you think ought to be made?
If I knew how this route, what the implications of these choices are about the ridership figures that you all had very available, I questioned them, but you had them available in January of this year. If I knew what it did to the connectors, the issue we were talking about, if I knew what it did to the speed of the trip, which is why people want to take this. That's what makes people want to take it. If I knew that, I, as a layperson, not an engineer, could tell you what I thought about that.
So let me ask the rest of the committee. So you've heard Diane's issues and concerns. Y'all have sat through 3 presentations of this downtown route, asked a variety of questions. Where are you?
So as it goes through downtown and hits the user base, generally Broadway, Commerce, 4th and 5th hit that mark. And that's the people that are gonna, if you look at the population numbers by block, the routes that it's going on, there are certainly issues where we could arm wrestle over the exact location of this and the width of something, but generally the route is going to pick up the most people and deliver the most people and hit the streets that it needs to hit for downtown.
And then, Tom, would they be more likely to ride the AMP than they would an improved, predictable, reliable bus? Would they be more likely to? Because we're expending a great deal of money to assure that the ridership will take it because it is a smoother, faster transit. And I haven't seen those comparisons.
I think you're never going to resolve what the two of you are talking around. Because I think what Bert is saying is, if in fact we're going to have an AMP, and if the AMP is going to go through downtown, is this the best way to go through downtown if there's an AMP? And Diane, I think you're still questioning whether there's an AMP, whether the AMP is going to get the ridership, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're on 2 different planes. And all we can do is agree that we're going to stipulate what Bert is trying to stipulate. That if indeed there's going to be an AMP, and if the AMP is going to be bus rapid transit, not light, but bus rapid transit, if we stipulate that, then from there on Broadway to the river, is this the best way to go based on what we know? I think that's all you're asking. And ridership, we can't get into ridership on that. So I think it's that very narrow question. And I think what you're trying to do is based on 3 meetings worth of discussions on what we know, is this the best way? And so I think that's the only way we can get consensus is on if we do those stipulations.
I personally am concerned about the same things that Diane is concerned about. And for example, this revised route compared to the way it was originally planned moves the station off of Broadway. One of the big things that was sold about the AMP was that all the tourists would be able to get on the AMP down there in that area and travel out to restaurants on West End and Broadway. And that, we're going to be losing a big chunk of them if it's not passing by there. I understand why it apparently cannot work because of the ADA, and I understand that and accept it. But how much is it going to hurt the ridership? And it's at what point is $175 million being spent just to add another bus lane or another bus route in the city? How is it going to be any better? Is it going to, justify the expense? And what's it going to do to existing traffic? Is it going to make it worse or better? So, this is kind of like when my wife asked me, we're going to take down your trophy elk head, and do you like this painting or this painting? Well, I don't know that I like either one of them. I like that elk head, So if you only narrow the choices down to these two,
So what I'd like to say, and this is consistent with what I would have said earlier. What I'd like to say on this is that, first of all, there's going to be trade-offs no matter what route you pick. There's going to be pluses, there's going to be minuses. From a consensus perspective, Bert, I think people around the table know that when it came to downtown, I had a different route in mind. I had a different route that I thought might be more productive. But as we go through this conversation and as I look at that route, I actually think this route does in fact work better. For one thing, I think there's plenty of tourists up around the Ryman, up around the hotels up there. I think there is a lot of access for tourists in that area of 5th and Commerce. I work downtown, so I see them in that area quite a bit. I see lots of stations grouped in this area, which gives people a lot of access. You don't necessarily have to wait 10 minutes for a bus to get there. There are other stations for you to get to one way or the other to be able to move around. And then finally, it goes through a great dense portion of the downtown area once it gets into downtown and once it exits. So from a consensus perspective, Bert, I came in here with a different view of a different route that I thought might be more productive. But I think when I measure all the trade-offs and all the questions that have been answered, this is a pretty good route. It's not the one I came in here to advocate, but it is a pretty good route.
I agree with Ralph 100%. I think I had similar reservations, but now after going through it, and today I appreciate Steve and Mark answering the questions about having that center station along Commerce. I think that's great. That's really going to catch your eye so that you'll be able to see that. I hope that works out as they move forward with looking at that with Public Works. And then also in front of the courthouse there, that's going to be a really prime station. So I concur. I think that this is a route that I can support.
I have another question. It seems like that the AMP is designed to be, in another term, an express bus to get you from one place to another quickly. And this route through downtown looks more like a local that's trying to stop and, zigzag around and pick up as many people as possible, not, get clear of a bunch of slow, bogged down traffic and move people quickly to a different area.
But I think there's so many destinations downtown so that, you really, that's where you kind of need that, is you want to impact a larger area. And, it's a quick walk, and with the connections of the circulator, I think if we look at this, with other systems, that it could work well.
How many miles does this whole area going through downtown cover? Does anybody know offhand? Oh, what?
Mile and a half?
Yeah, it'd be a mile and a half. I don't think it's over 2. It's under 2.
I think when you think of downtown, you're talking about a place that a lot of people are going to be going to and from. When you set that regional system, you get that spine set, you're going to have people coming into downtown and moving out of downtown. So moving it through downtown in this way gives maximum opportunity for people to board, maximum opportunity for people to get off in the area of the destinations that they're looking for. So I tend to see downtown as more of a center point where you want that rapidity and that frequency and that predictability getting to that area. And then you do have a fair amount of options when you get down here about how to move out and how to move around.
I would agree. I would add that with the routing by the bus station, you're tying it not only to all the local and BRT light routes that also come to Music City Central, but you're also tying it to the RTA regional routes that are coming in from Murfreesboro, from the north, and from all over the region. So, yeah.
So, yes, Laura?
One other thing, I was just thinking about that center thing on Commerce. Now, I don't know what the semi-loading thing is there, but I'm a little worried about the design if it was in the center and it was really narrow, about getting hit on the roof of the pedestrian platform. Just to have them look at that, which would make you lean more towards curbside so that the semis wouldn't hit.
If I could maybe pull this to a close and see where we are, but I really like Lee's analogy of this bucket and the 2 paintings. Because I think that really...
Don't anybody tell my wife I said that.
It's on channel 3 now, so...
She's watching.
But I really...
It'll be on YouTube tomorrow.
But I really think that Lewis's stipulation is really what I'm trying to do, is that on a foot-by-foot basis, trying to get the best route that we can, knowing that there are issues of concern around ridership, that there are concerns around cost, those sort of things that hopefully if we get through these pieces, we'll be able to grapple and learn more about and hear about. But what I've got is that the downtown route we would go to Commerce, we would go out Woodland. We have 2 issues that are open, that is the gate of Charlotte, and then whether the Commerce line is, whether it's in the center or on the curve. And so, but I also understand that there are a lot of larger questions, so if we can just add that your stipulation, Lewis, are there any other items or questions that folks would like to add to that?
I think Cliff's thought about the right turn and priority is, so if it makes things move faster, I think that's what we're looking for, is speed and predictability. If it works, that's great. If it doesn't, then we've explored it and know why it doesn't work.
Can you do your...
I was just going to, obviously, we're not voting on the AMP. What we're saying is if there's going to be an AMP, based on what we know, is this the best way to get through downtown from 8th or 9th and Broadway to the river? And so I think that's the stipulation. If we decide that this project ought to happen, which is not the decision of this committee, does this committee recommend, after 3 looks at it, this route among the others that we have seen?
Right, and that's really the simple question that I've got.
My
Well,
answer is yes.
and I think that Lee's comment is correct. I'm not even sure, in this regard, we're not even talking BRT anymore, are we? I mean, we're just trying to get through downtown because the direct route down Broadway to the river and then up across the river was criticized in the first place by the downtown business.
Yeah, so what you're saying is exactly right. Based on what we've heard, what we've talked about, that this is what we think is the best route that of getting through downtown. That's exactly right.
So it has nothing to do with BRT?
It is the route, it is the best route
Through downtown.
through downtown, given all these considerations.
Correct. I agree.
Okay. All right, here, some consensus, a lot of concern. You know, the great thing is we're getting it all, it's part of the record, and with this stipulation, let's move forward.
Mr. Matthews?
Yes.
Just to make sure I understand correctly, since this is right in my work area, what Larry said is going to be part of the official minutes, if you will, that we're voting on this almost due to lack of option. You know.
That's right.
You know.
Yes. I mean,
I just want to, because I have.
is the best of all the choices that we had getting through downtown.
I would think a more accurate description would be constraints, realistic constraints, rather than lack of options.
Yeah, I mean, you can
spend. Options would be to totally avoid going through downtown, but it kind of defeats the purpose of having a transit system if it doesn't go where the people are. So.
Well, I disagree with the comment about that. I mean, yeah, all right, first of all, if you say that you like this route because it provides lots of stops and access for riders in the downtown area to get on and off, then going on that logic, we should maybe make the AMP stop at every intersection so that people can get on and off, and that provides great access. But that defeats the entire purpose of it. So, I mean, it makes it just a regular bus. So, why is it that it's, express and dedicated lanes in some sections of the entire 7-mile route, but in other places it zigzags all through, the most difficult area.
Steve?
Well, I guess, a couple items. One, as we've said here, this is really the practical way through downtown after we've heard all the stakeholders. The second part of that is really it's stopping at 3 locations generally. It's stopping generally here in Second. It's stopping at Music City Center, and it's stopping down here in Commerce. So it's really stopping in 3 general locations on the route. So it's not stopping everywhere. And then we've got a route that best meets the various needs through the city to make it work.
And those are curbside stations, aren't they?
Up here, we've shown them as curbside, but you can imagine those are eastbound, westbound, and they work as a pair.
Yeah.
And in the ones that we would possibly convert them to a center station, they would be one station that would operate eastbound, westbound. But it's generally 3 places.
If I could, in the interest of time, I think we've got a sense of where we are with this. So let's go to the Midtown route, which doesn't have any, which has got a lot of dedicated center running lanes, in contrast to what we just talked about.
All right, again, shifting to the downtown or the Midtown piece, again, it's essentially from I-40 to I-440 that we'll be looking at. As you can see, the yellow pieces here are mixed flow, and then the other pieces are dedicated center running. We have about 4 stations in this particular section. One of the questions that did come up last time that we wanted to address was with 21st Street being a major route, how does the design address traffic traveling west on West End that are trying to turn on 21st, make a left? As you can see, this is just a blow-up of the 21st Avenue intersection, and as you can see, the design allows for the lefts at 21st. And the design also allows, again, lefts at most of the major cross streets throughout the system itself. So we are allowing for lefts where it is most prudent for lefts to occur for traffic.
Steve, are you going to go through that foot by foot again?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so as we'll just kind of take a look at the plans. Again, this is 9th. So just beginning here at 12th Street, just as a starting point near I-40. Again, we would keep the left turn going down into the Gulch, southbound on 12th. And the station would be here at 12th and Broadway, a center station. Pedestrians would access it by the curb to a center platform. Again, as we move along westbound, you know, this would be a dedicated lane westbound. This would be a dedicated lane eastbound. At this location, the bus would get a red light, and the folks that are in this lane going to the turn lane would be able to get through this. Again, it would be a protected movement for them so that they could get to this left turn lane in this direction. When the bus gets a green, of course, these folks would get a red, so the bus would cross through into a more of a center lane, but would begin flowing with traffic. And again, the through lanes, 2 through lanes are here, and they would continue on through. Yeah. What I do want to point out is in the eastbound direction, to improve this whole intersection, we're adding dual lefts at the I-40.
Oh, really?
Going northbound to kind of help move some of the traffic through that intersection. There's room for that, so we're gonna try to accommodate that. Again, on the west side of the 14th Avenue, again, we keep this right turn lane. We keep these through lanes, and again, these lanes become a double left onto the bridge, and 2 lanes continue to move westbound. And from this section forward, the bus is going to just follow along the center lanes in mixed traffic. Why we see this working pretty well is that there really aren't any stations here, and there's less traffic in the middle, so that it would not slow the bus down much. So the bus would not have to go to the curb and compete with the right turning traffic or the traffic trying to get on the highway. So we're going to operationally keep the buses in the middle and move them through this section in a mixed flow manner.
Steve?
Yes.
If I wanted to make a turn anywhere along that stretch that you just outlined, how to get to one side of the road?
Any of the
how would I do
businesses,
that?
it would function like it would function today.
Okay.
We're going to maintain the same pavement striping. That's why if you see these black lines stop, we're just going to maintain the same striping that is out there today.
So there's no change in that?
No change. What would be different is that the buses would just run along the center lanes. And again, there's no stops, so there's no need for them to go to the curb lane and compete with the other traffic. So they would move along relatively quickly.
But it would just be paint?
The buses
Yes.
would be in the center lane
They would be in the centermost lane, let's put it that way.
of the 3 going in each direction.
Correct.
Okay.
Again, then they wouldn't have to compete, but the center turn lane would remain as mixed traffic.
Steve?
Yes.
Sorry. At the right-hand edge of this image, I see 3 travel lanes headed west. But, okay, now at the right-hand edge, I see 2, but just to the left of 15th Avenue, I see 3. Is it 3 or is
Yes,
it 2?
this is 3, and this becomes a right turn lane.
Headed west.
Headed west, or west. Okay.
Headed east.
Headed east.
Are you talking
No,
east?
I'm asking about west.
Okay.
If I'm headed west, right there are 2. And
Right.
If you move your
They
mouse
would
to the left, there are 3.
Move into 3, and one of these
Is going to be a bus.
would be a bus lane coming across the bridge.
I'm hoping that that's a drawing error and that there are 3 on both sides of 15th Avenue.
Yeah, see, one's a turn lane, so it's 2 carrying through.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
So the one's a turn lane and that goes. Okay.
Correct, that
Gotcha.
fades out.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? All right, as we continue along, as we get to 17th Street, there'll be another station. And crossing over where the Broadway split, the dedicated bus lanes begin. Then there would be a station here at 17th. Again, we have a left turn here at 17th Street. Avenue, sorry.
You say there's a station there. What, is it the center?
Yes, that one would be center. At
So that
17.
becomes the dedicated bus lane right there?
Yes, sir. Yep. Past 6th, 16th.
So at the split, basically.
Yes. It's a good opportunity for signing to work out well.
So right
I can
there at
imagine.
16th is where traffic goes from 3 lanes moving west to down to 2 lanes.
2 lanes moving west to 2 lanes.
This is 2 turn lanes now.
Correct. 2 through lanes, 2 turn lanes.
Two and two.
2 through lanes go straight, the turn lanes take Broadway, and the bus picks up the lane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gives you access to the hall. If you don't walk to the hall.
Okay. Continuing. Continuing on at 18th again, we keep the lefts. We're maintaining 2 lanes, each 2 lanes in each direction. Again, like I was saying before, many of the major cross streets have the left turns in them.
Does 19th have one?
19th does, but you can see like Lyle does not.
Yeah.
And again, this would become a right in, right out location. So some of the minor streets like this one and others would become right in, right out. The major ones would again be provided with lefts.
So if I wanted to get to the Hampton Inn, which is the building on the left at the southwest corner of Lyle, and I'm headed from downtown, how would I do that?
You could make a left here and go in this way.
That street's one way out. Would you be allowed to do a U-turn and then turn into the Hampton parking lot?
You would be allowed a U-turn here for, I think, a car would be able to make that turn. I'll never live that one down.
Could I go back to 17th?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sort of half made a joke, and now I'm actually kind of more serious about it. In terms of between 16th and 17th, where the first station is, right? Yeah,
Yes.
right at 17. Yeah, right there. Is that now the best place for the station? And I was thinking when that was going to be HCA's towers and that kind of thing, that was a big deal. But maybe that's the only place you can do it. But the next block has much more action and activity to it.
There is a potential
For somebody who wants to get off the bus there, I just wonder if that's.
We'd have to check. We'd have to just check the grades along the road.
I don't know,
I
but unfortunately, there's not much there right now.
Yeah, Lewis, I've thought the same thing. However, there will be something, we would hope.
We hope,
Right.
yeah.
We don't have as much as Alex.
Well, I won't comment. Right now, there's a whole lot more on 18th, 17th, 18th, than 16th, 17th. And so if it, all things being equal, I wonder if it'd be better. Where's the next one? West?
It would be at, I believe, 23rd.
23rd?
Yeah.
That's a long way, isn't it? It's worth taking a look at.
Okay. Again, just continuing through, again, the major cross streets get left turns. The minor ones do not. 20th, again, has lefts.
You don't need that left turn on the 20th. Heading east.
Correct.
Oh, but you do need the U-turn. I'm wrong.
Yes, you'll
Okay.
need the U-turns. Again, at 21st, there are lefts, or U-turns, lefts and U-turns. Again, the same 2 bus lanes, 2 auto lanes.
So, Steve, I'm
Yes.
going to ask the same exact question to make sure that I'm clear and that I don't misrepresent what we've been told after the meeting today. At places, intersections that become right in, right out only as a result of this project, U-turns would be legal at the intersections on either side. This is a good example.
Correct.
Here. Okay,
Yes.
great, thank you.
This is another example of a right-in, right-out street. 23rd would be the next station. Again, we continue along. At 24th, again, there'd be lefts and U's allowed. 2 bus lanes. As we move into 25th, again, you see that we've got a through and right allowed. Keep traffic moving. We have a double left at this location to go into Elliston Place. As we move out in front of Centennial, again, we're maintaining some minimum lane widths here, and we're working with the parks to examine possibly moving the wall along the park. That's intended to be rebuilt as part of a parks project. And here at 27th would be the next station. Again, this would be a median station. People would enter from the curbside. 27th would be a right-in, right-out. 27th North and 28th South would have lefts, both directions. 28th North would become a right-in, right-out. And we're maintaining 2 lanes in each direction in the bus lanes. And lefts and rights, left turns at, again, the major cross streets.
So let me just, so I think that's West End discount. Is that at 29th and
Correct.
West End? So that traffic doesn't change for that liquor store that I stop at sometimes. Or maybe I should say the grocery store across the street from it.
There you go.
But it's just the same.
Yeah, here at 29th North, you'd be able to pull in as a right turn, and you'd also get a left. And this driveway into this parking area would also get a signalized left.
It's interesting. He certainly doesn't think that. It's interesting.
And again, 29th South would not operate that. It would be a right in, right out. Continuing along at 30th, again, 30th North would be right in, right out. 30th South would be right in, right out. Again, 2 bus lanes, 1 in each direction, and the auto lanes, 1 in each direction.
You drive past Bricktops and turn and come back in another way. You can't turn left if you're headed downtown.
That's correct.
Correct.
You have to turn at 31st.
Correct.
Or the U-turn at 29th.
Yes. Yes. Moving west from 31st Street, we're going to be putting the sidewalk on the north side of the existing historic wall.
Have you gotten permission to do that?
We have to work on the right-of-way issues associated with that. We know that it's a private land trust. So we have to work on that yet still. The right-of-way piece to that.
What would you do, condemn the property?
Ask them to sell it or give us right-of-way. It provides some good benefit for the use of this area, public use. People are in and out of there all the time now. It'll provide a nice walkway through there. But we're going to work through the right-of-way issues for that.
Well, and adding a station right in front of it is certainly going to help their property values.
I think so, yes. up to Ackland. Let's see, the right turn, the left at Ackland would be maintained.
And this is why we need a disclosure of conflicts policy.
33rd, again, would be right in, right out.
Coming by your house next.
In this section, as we get north of Murphy, there's a couple things going on. This is probably one of the more heavily traveled sections of the road. And in this section, as you can see, we're keeping the 3 lanes. And we're using a bi-directional bus lane. Right here, you can see a stop bar. The bus would stop to hold for the eastbound bus before it would advance through this section. And on this side, at the intersection, the bus would hold for the westbound bus to pass through. And that allows us space. Yep.
Steve, how many through lanes heading west on at the Murphy Road intersection are there?
There's 2 plus the turn lane.
I'm talking about west, not turning.
Well, there's
Just
2
only
through
lanes.
and this right turn. I think that's what we have now.
Yes, isn't that the same that's out there now? 2 west with a right turn.
There's a lot of turn movement.
And now,
there.
and going in, it's 3 going in, but we're picking up 3 going in all the way in?
No. It's just for that first bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not clear, Steve. Can you pan to the right a bit? Eastbound lanes.
They cut down to 2 immediately.
Oh, gotcha. Well, you've got a right turn lane onto Murphy, and then the 2 go right on through.
But going east,
Going east,
we have 3.
you have 3. You have 2 throughs and a through right.
And then if you keep panning to the east.
East.
There, yeah, keep panning to the east. I think that 3 becomes 2.
Yes.
Which is what happens to it today, except during rush hour.
Right, with parking, right.
And what does the intersection look like again? Down at head to the
At your right.
east.
At
East.
East.
It's 2.
2 and a turn. Going to 2.
Steve, can you sort of help us out here with what we're trying to figure out is how this compares to what's existing so we can get our brains around whether we're all losing a lane of traffic during rush hour or not. So if you pan to the west, or maybe you can to the left. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, there's 3 lanes straight here.
2 in a bus, right?
Yeah, there's 2 in a bus, and you can see these white lines are existing underneath it. I'd have to go through and tally that up exactly to be able to report that out. As we move along, this becomes a through and right.
Okay.
Again, past Murphy, again, we maintain the 2 bus lanes, the 2 through lanes in this location. On the inbound, there's 3 lanes going in the eastbound direction. We're maintaining the left turn at Murphy. As we move towards the highway, we're meeting the curb line on this side and widening to the north so that we have enough room. One thing I want to point out is this ramp. We're going to widen the ramp so that we can put a signal at the I-44 ramp, and that this will allow for some queuing. And so it would operate like a signal here so that We'd open up the lanes and let the cars go through.
That's for traffic coming off the interstate?
Off of the interstate, yes.
And is that permissible by U.S. Department of Transportation?
It was a requested item.
Okay. So they want...
They wanted that signal.
A stoplight there?
Yes.
And they're not concerned that at certain times it could back up traffic onto the interstate?
We're going to have to provide how much queuing that might be, and that's part of why we have a dual lane there shown.
Okay. And on the ramp that comes at the bottom of the screen off of the interstate onto Broadway or West End and turning toward town, you've got 2 lanes of traffic coming from Harding Road toward town, and then you've got 2 and in places 3 lanes of traffic there coming off the interstate. And initially, it's 3 lanes headed toward town over to the right of the screen. But then just after Murphy Road, the intersection, it chokes down to just 2 lanes.
Correct.
So in morning rush hour, you suddenly have 5 lanes going down to 2.
After Murphy. It goes from 3 to 2 after Murphy. After
Yeah.
Murphy.
I mean, but in a very short period of time, you have 5 lanes going down to 2.
Well, it's not 5. It's 3.
Excuse me. I just pointed out, coming in from West End, you've got 2 lanes there, right?
Correct.
And 3 lanes coming off the interstate.
Correct.
Okay, so that's 5 lanes feeding, and then in a very short period of time, in about 1 block, it cuts down to just 2 lanes.
It's not 5 though. You have 2 lanes.
2 lanes on
This is 3.
on
One,
West End.
yeah. I mean, I'm
And then
having a hard time
3 lanes
following
coming
you.
off the interstate.
Right. But they
My
all
point
flow into
is,
3.
In a short period of time, you go from 5 to 3 to 2.
Lee, let me see. Today, there are 3 lanes there, right? So whether today, if you want to call it the 3 that are merging into that, which is why they've got that light, you've got a situation that's 5 to 3, correct?
5
If
to
you want
3
to call that
during rush hour.
5, yes. I mean, it's this.
And it's going to be 5 to 2.
We've got this.
It's 3 to.
We got the same thing today that we have the same thing with this that we have today.
There's
Is
no
that correct?
there's no parking. There's an extra lane during rush hour because there's no on-street parking.
Okay, but from
During rush hour.
Murphy Road west, it's the same.
Correct.
And then
Murphy Road East, it would
right.
change. Right there.
So you've got it all there except for.
Here's where it
so-
transitions.
Correct.
It's at that point on the right of the screen.
Right.
Where
Goes
it
from
chokes
3
down
to
to
2.
2 lanes.
Goes from 3 to 2.
From 3 to 2, which it does not do right now during rush hour.
Isn't it? Okay.
Steve, clearly, I think there's a lot of worry about this area that you guys have pointed out between Murphy Road and 31st, which is very congested, about reducing the throughput. And I think for me, for example, and probably for a lot of people, until the traffic study's done and we know whether this is going to slow things down, speed them up, slow it down for the buses, speed it for the cars, slow it for the cars, speed it for the buses, et cetera. We're just expressing concern.
As rightly you should. We're working on the traffic analysis now with TDOT, Metro, and others. And we're going to present data that they also will buy into. And we're not going to present that data until we've, taken it all the way through all the agencies.
Yeah, Diane, I think this is where it really is critical in terms of the ridership, as opposed to the discussion we just had downtown, at least for me. This one, we got to see the numbers, because this is the most congested part of the whole 7 miles, I think. Is this 3 or 4 block area right there.
We're, behind the scenes, we're working with
You're right on
TDOT
that.
hand in
Absolutely right on
hand
that.
to make sure we've got something that they can live with, something that Metro can live with, something that MTA can live with.
Can I ask one thing? So I think we've got a lot of comments and questions and concerns. That's why y'all are going to be coming back at our next meeting to do that. We've got 5 minutes before we get out of here. Can you walk us through the west side of town?
Yeah.
Just real quick, Bert, on that intersection, and it is the hardest part of the project, we're going to have a simulation model we've been working on with RPM that'll really help. We'll show that in one of the next meetings.
Sooner rather than later would be great.
Yeah, right. Moving west from I-440, again, the buses are in the center lane, and they'll begin to shift to the curbside. And from here forward, we're not intending to change any of the curbs locations. We'll just be moving in the curb lanes with the buses. At Elmington Park, again, the signals would be the same as they are today. We're not intending to change signal locations or add signals at this point. At the park, we'd be restriping the lot to accommodate like 110 approximately spots. We're working with the parks to determine which spots would be BRT, which would be for the use of the neighborhood. We're also working with them to identify places for bike parking and other amenities. Again, as we continue west, with us moving to the curbside locations, we need to identify curbside stations. We have merely placed some placeholders at this point. We need to continue some dialogue and work on that to nail those down. So those aren't specific quite yet. Again, as we move along through here, the curb lines all stay the same, and we're in the curb lanes. All the signals will operate as they do
Steve,
today.
quick question. That looks like it looks today.
Yes. All the signals will have lefts and rights exactly as they do today. The difference is we would have transit signal priority so that the bus could get a little bit more speed, working with the existing arrangement.
Follow the bus.
Yes. Continuing west, again, all the streets would function, all the cross streets would function like they do today. The middle lane would continue to be there.
Where's the road being? I need to call He's not going to be.
Again, we've just placed curbside stations where they are close to the previous center station. Again, these are just placeholders. We have more work to do to identify specifics, and when we know that, we'll bring that back to the committee. But the road would function just as it does today.
Steve, may I call you and talk specifically about the traffic pattern around Westminster Presbyterian?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Again, as we approach St. Thomas, their drive would function the same as it does today. One addition, along the north side of the road near the parking deck, we want to add a right turn lane so that the bus could jump into that right turn lane and make a quick turn onto Bosley Springs. And again, we just want to be able to move the buses through this intersection quicker. So
Would it be a dedicated bus turning lane?
Not sure yet. Not sure yet. You know, obviously, we would like to do that, but it doesn't have to be. We haven't made that decision.
Steve said it would allow more cars off of the road if it were
Correct.
shared.
We haven't made that decision either way, but we do want to add that right turn.
Steve?
Yes.
The first station is inside of the Bosley Springs, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you have any specific location for
Um,
holding?
Not at
that
this
location?
point. We're sketching that up for our next plan submittal. And And again, when we have that sketched up, we'll show the group. And that needs some work too, as far as where it goes. And more discussion with St. Thomas as well. Okay, that's the end of the plan. Any particular other questions? Again, this is the first showing of West End. So we'll see it a few more times.
All right, so it's 2 o'clock. I want to thank y'all all for working as hard as you did today, for the comments. Any questions that you have on the Midtown route that you didn't get a chance to express today, please feel free to get them to the team so that at our next meeting we can provide as many answers as we possibly can. I think you've gotten a lot, Steve and Mark, a lot of questions that we'd really like to see answers to. And without further ado, I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.